Awesome. Let's start on the outside with Maiko Schaffrath, the founder of Impact Hustlers. It's a community supporting entrepreneurs to solve the world's biggest social and sustainability or environmental challenges. That does sound very bold.
It is bold. We got bold entrepreneurs. We got founders that are building electric airplanes, that are creating substitutes to egg protein, all kinds of bold ambition. So, yeah.
Not only that, you also host a podcast on a weekly basis, the Impact Hustlers podcast. You also are the co-founder of the Climate Tech Foundation Summit. And I think you run something, we'll probably dive into it later on, the Global Climate Tech Bootcamp taking place in November with more than 5,000 participants. So well done. Great to have you here.
Yeah, the bootcamp actually just wrapped up. It was in August, and we did a showcase, and it's actually one of the things that we're partnering with Impact Festival and with Startup Hessen as well. And then in November, we got the Climate Tech Founders Summit, which is a 2-day virtual event bringing together ecosystems from the US and Europe.
I can see the founder DNA, no second wasted without a pitch.
There we go, yeah.
Yes, that's awesome. Next to him is Jana Schlender, Head of Strategic Partnerships at Impact Hub Berlin. Probably from all organizations here on stage, I would say the oldest organization. Not old, really, only old in startup terms, but I think you started around about 13 years ago. I think you started out of Berlin, actually. And you built really now a global hub of decentralized impact hubs. More than 24,000 members in your community at 100 locations. That is impressive.
I believe so too, yes. Yeah, we were actually not the first one, but Impact Hub London or King's Cross was the first one, but still, yeah, we are a very close network, global network.
Berlin followed very soon, because I can remember there was an Impact Hub 10 years ago in Berlin.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, next to me is Mara. She runs the Impact Festival. Thanks a lot, Mara. Great job, no?
Thanks a lot for being here today and moderating.
Yes, I don't think you need an introduction. Everybody experienced the Impact Festival in the last 2 days, but maybe some numbers still. You have the numbers. I think what I read on the website is 12,000 members, 1,000 companies, around about 500 startups that are part of the community. You organized actually in Slack, if you take the whole community, but also Impact Festival launched its own platform, I think, around about half a year ago, where you really pool together solutions, companies, and you try to do some matchmaking, sort of.
Yeah, it's pretty much the online version of the festival, just to have an efficient matchmaking all year round.
Awesome. I'll come to you, but I'll give you a moment to breathe, because I think you've been working pretty hard, not only in the last 2 days, but also in the last more than 2 months, I guess. Maiko, what's interesting is that your community is organized purely digitally, more or less.
Not anymore purely, actually. We started as a pure online community, and we now have city chapters in London, New York, and about to launch in San Francisco properly. So we have monthly events in those cities, and they're in person. We just crave for personal connection. So yeah, we do have a personal element now, but we started as purely online, yeah.
You started purely online. Now, nevertheless, you've been here for a day engaging physically. Have you become jealous?
Jealous, yeah, absolutely. To be honest, to be very transparent, I haven't actually told Mara. We are brainstorming around doing an event, not in Offenbach.
Excuse me.
In London. Oh, we should partner on that. But yeah, we love in-person connection. We're doing monthly smaller events with 100 founders in a room, with 10 founders around a dinner table, those kind of connections that what we love. I don't know if we're ever going to run something like Impact Festival. That's not what we do, but like we love like intimate connections between founders and in-person connections as well. So
I'm really surprised, because obviously this panel is around the challenges of building communities. Now, is it actually possible to really build close-knit communities without any physical encounters? And if so, what kind of mechanisms did you employ digitally to really get those serendipity going, to really get the bonding going, the trust?
Yeah, I've been running programs all throughout COVID, and it's really interesting to see. So first of all, there is the type of communities that were in person before COVID, and suddenly they had to switch to online. That was, I mean, beyond some technical challenges and sorting out and figuring out, it was relatively easy if you have an existing relationship with people and, okay, now we were meeting online, but we trust each other already. Creating like trust and strong connections purely on Zoom without having met in person is an art. And I have to say, in the first iterations of running virtual only sessions, I had to learn that as well, how to do that. And I would never say that we're perfect on everything, but like, I think with the bootcamp, for example, we did exactly that. So the Global Climate Tech Bootcamp, we did a virtual pitch event for people to apply. And then we did a 4-week virtual program. And I just had a chat with the founders, and they were like, it's incredible how we felt already like friends, even though we never met in person. And I think one of the things is I try to lead with vulnerability. So we made the sessions very
I think
deep.
I heard that in a TED Talk.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, that wasn't mine.
It's the most popular TED Talk ever is about vulnerability by Gene. Is it Gene Brown? Breen Brown?
Brené Brown.
Yeah.
So leading with that, me as a host of the bootcamp, I've been running those sessions with the team together. And we went into pretty deep topics very quickly. We went into depression, burnout, how to deal with financial struggles as a founder, how to deal with investors that are ghosting you, all kinds of stuff. We went very quickly into that. And I tried to lead with, these are my challenges. Let's put all our challenges on the table. I think if it's too superficial, you're not going to build any strong connection. So we try to really be like, look, this space is for you to actually talk about all the stuff you can't talk about with your investors. You may not be able to talk about with your extended team. You may not want to talk about everything. So we're just trying to get people in a space of giving them permission to be vulnerable and leading by that yourself as a host of the community. I think that's a really good recipe, even for online. Would I say that personal is still a bit better? I think it is, and that's why we do more in person. But
just quick detailed question: how large were the groups you were starting to share that depth with? Was it more like 6 people, or did you really do that with 40 people in one chat?
So I've been doing it with Impact Hustlers. We've been doing it with different size groups, but we always try to break them down. So even now with the bootcamp, we had 11 founders, but we broke them down regularly into groups of 3, into different groups of 3, and rotated them. So that's usually where you get more intimacy. If you put a group of 11 people on a Zoom call, it doesn't tend to work. So unless you're just delivering some content.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Let me pass it ball to Mara. Now I know awesome location here. Nevertheless, you're moving to Frankfurt next year. I think one of the reasons being also because it'll help you as a festival to significantly lower the CO2 footprint in terms of travel. Now, I said awesome how to meet here physically. But obviously, the festival is about creating impact. So what justification do you still have to not go purely digital? That would save you such a huge chunk of emissions.
Yeah, very true point. It's not that easy.
Just to stress the fact here. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the point is that you need to find ways to track your impact. And that is an incredibly hard thing to do. At the end of the day, we hope to create more impact by hosting the festival so we can justify the impact in terms of CO2, etc. To be transparent, we have not found our one KPI to track that. Because at the end of the day, it's often what happens after the festival. It's not what happens right here. Like here, people meet, startups get in contact with corporates, with investors. We have all these sustainable solutions out there. And our job is to connect them with potential businesses who need to implement a solution or connect them with investors, giving funding to scale up their solution. But often that happens 3 months, 6 months, a year later after the connection was first made. So it's incredibly tough for us to track if it's worth it at the end of the day. And it's super complex because we don't only have CO2 solutions. And then you could kind of like, okay, that those are our emissions, but we're kind of making up for that with that. So it's super hard. And yeah, finding the right KPI for yourself and also being able to track it. But we're working on that.
Now, that's a really interesting point to bring up, because when I enrolled for my ticket, it was mandatory to fill in what kind of means of travel I get here. Am I staying in a hotel? So for you, it's fairly easy in brackets to track how much negative impact you have, but really to track the positive impact of a community, of those encounters, is really, it's very hard to grasp, but it's a key question for all 3 of you, I guess, because if you have investors, or if you have subsidies from the community or the city, you sort of need to justify, obviously, the outcome. So what means are there for impact communities to really track, to put it into numbers? Or how do you, I don't know how is the Impact Festival actually financed? Do you have subsidies in the background, or do you have investors? And what do they want to see at the end of the day? Or how do you know actually you're on track with your vision?
But maybe you can reframe, because it's about how we are monetizing the festival. We have different pillars how to make this work. We are not for profit event, but we do have sponsoring partners who carry the main share of the festival. We do sell tickets. We do sell the exhibition stands to the startups at a super low rate. But yeah, those are all means how we make this work. But it's not easy to monetize communities. And I think Mike and I were actually in like a community for community builders. when we first joined, I was a bit like, that's a bit of a waste of time, because I need to meet startups, I need to meet investors. But when I first joined it, I was like, this is amazing, because we're all facing the similar challenges. Like, it's super tough for us to find ways how to sustainably finance our communities.
Now, it did take a different route, because I wanted to bring up the finance question later. I just wanted to lead in the direction with that of how would you be able to prove that it was an investment well spent? I heard that you're not for profit. You do not have like the city of Offenbach or Frankfurt putting in a lot of money. So I guess you do not have to answer them at the end of the day. Might be more interesting for you, Jana, because some impact hubs, they really have a foundation. I think the impact hub in Munich has the Quant Foundation in the background. Correct me if I'm wrong. But your hubs have different financial models. Sometimes they have backers in the background. So how can you track the impact you create with a singular hub or with a community you build?
I mean, we do a lot of impact measurement, because that's very key to a lot of our programs, and we are very close with our local communities, and we also have like many surveys, many ways of impact measurement, and we publish it on a bi-yearly report also. So we try to really show the impact of the community. But this also means you need an engaged community. You need really, it's not a one-way road. So maybe let's step back one step, because I think we have 3 examples that how a community can be very engaging. But like, there's so many communities and networks out there, but are they really communities, or is it rather, for example, people consuming like likes on social media don't make a community? So how do you build those connections? And I think you just also said it's very key to build intimacy, to also enable a community. So that's really important and really key. And then it comes back to the question, how do you finance this? Because it's very valuable. I mean, this is the clothing panel, and I'm really surprised that so many people are here. So the interest for communities is large. But who's willing to pay for that also? Let's also put it that way.
Okay, both of you brought up that topic now, so let's go a little bit deeper here. Who is willing to pay for that? How have you, I mean, obviously the Impact Hub still is there. You have 100 hubs around the world, so somebody apparently was willing to pay for it. I personally am a member of the Impact Hub in Hamburg. They sadly partly went bankrupt, but then last minute were acquired, so they've downsized significantly. So sometimes it seems to go well, most of it, sometimes not. So what means have you found to finance the Impact Hub community?
Well, let's say in Berlin, we're really lucky. We have a 3,500 square meter space where a co-working space where we also host a local community of changemakers and entrepreneurs. So they, of course, there's a business model behind that. You pay for your membership. And we have a digital platform, and this comes also with a membership fee. But we try to keep it really low for the impact entrepreneurs, because like where they're at, it's not there are networks, there are communities where you pay a couple 10,000 K per year, but that's not what we want. We want to keep it low key for the change makers, believers out there who want to make a change and are not profitable yet. So we of course have to find other ways to finance this, and one of it is we find partners, corporate partners, for example, for our programs that would support our programs. That then on the second hand support the community. So this is also a second way to finance what we do, because the community enabling actually takes a lot of resource and work to put into that.
How do you keep that value within the community? I mean, obviously, being a member, I can testify I wouldn't go to another co-working space, because for me personally, it's very valuable to run into impact founders, sustainability. It's like synergies and serendipities I wouldn't find in another space. So personally, for me, it's worthwhile. And I know there's a lot of other Impact Hub members of Hamburg actually here that I meet here again. So for me, it's lovely. But that's just one singular story. And you have really small startups at the beginning. So do they stick with you when they become bigger? Or all those chance encounters you can facilitate between startups and companies? I mean, you don't take a commission for that. Mm-hmm. So you create a value, but how do you keep that within your community, and not once the startup gets bigger, they rent their office space at Beta House or at WeWork because now they need more space. So how do you...
I mean, we have the case right now, like 1,5. They grew so fast and so much that they're now moving out, and they make room for other new entrepreneur startups that take their place. So it's a natural cycle, and that's also what we want to push. We don't want to sit in our own soup like for too long. Yeah, they actually, I think the trust building, the engagement is something that carries on, and they are very thankful for all the support the community also offered them while they were not in the place they are now. I think another challenge is that in the impact sector, we're super busy and a lot of times on the edge of, like our resources are very, very limited. So how do we, the willingness is there all the time, but how do we enable people who don't have a lot of resources also to have easy access points to plug into the community and stay in the community space?
You want to add something to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to grasp on your sentence about this is just a singular story. I think at the end of the day, it's about all these stories and understanding them, because I don't really like to think in like these target personas. Like those are the startups, they need these 3 things. Those are the investors, they need that. It's not about that. It's not that easy. You can't break it down. It is complex, and it's complex to understand what each individual or each company needs. But I think you need to understand each member of your community in order to create this value. And I think then you can keep the value inside. It's just, yeah.
So you don't in your office, you have like 6 characters, like that's Andy the evangelist, and that's Fiona the founder.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, of course, you need to make it more simple. But first, when you're setting it up, and when you're setting up this whole program, like with the festival, I think people probably don't realize how much effort we put in every single detail just to ensure that we're making it right for everybody. Like when all the startups or scale-ups are applying, we really ask them, who is your target persona? Which industry do you need to meet? At what stage are you at the moment? What are you looking for? Is it visibility? Is it investors? Just to understand whether we can deliver or not. I could probably sell more stands easily, but I really want to understand if I can make it right for them and if I provide them with what they need.
Just a minor observation, by the way, what I really like in comparison to another very famous Green Tech Festival is that the booth sizes here are almost the same size. You do not have the startups, and then you have like the big hall with the one big corporate. So everybody is very much here on the same level, and I think that's very nice.
I think it's important to make space for things you can see and touch. Yeah. And you don't need to have like a, 100 square meter stand. If you're offering a software, it's really unnecessary. So it's just about, okay, who is presenting what, what we want to showcase, how?
Now, Michael, to include you back and also bring another up. So how do we get it out of the bubble? Because I think it's a challenge you run into as well. It's obvious. I mean, that's also my personal story, but I love coming here because it gives me inspiration. It's those people who fight the same fight every day, go for the same mission. Sometimes you're out there alone. You don't know why you actually do it. Coming here is really like replenishing, and you're motivated for weeks and days afterwards. But obviously you need those people here who are not on board that, who are not enthusiastic, who really don't understand why we need sustainability. And is it actually true that there is climate change? Because I read something on Telegram that said otherwise, and it was backed up by scientists. So how do you break that bubble? Because obviously you have a community, it trusts itself, and then the risk is that it's too much self-contained.
It's true, and I think about it all the time, and I don't think I've got the answer for it completely. I think how we think about it is, first of all, at the core, we need to support those that are like driven to make the change. Like there's still a lot of need to support those people. Now, that's a bubble by definition. If we just focus on those founders that are already starting startups, that are doing amazing things, that is a bubble. So what we've been trying to do, and to be honest, we're not doing good enough of a job with Impact Hustlers, is kind of reaching out to other communities in society that go beyond the tech ecosystem, beyond innovation. For the summit in November, we've been inviting activists, people that are out there on the streets, that are, things like Just Stop Oil and, a bunch of activists, because I think a lot of problems in society come down to polarization and to people not coming together to actually figure out what is the solution. Am I going to, I think, convince the kind of worst climate denier on like joining our community? Maybe not. But I think the biggest impact that we can have is making it a no-brainer for even those people to use the solutions that some of the founders, some of the startups are creating. I don't know who said it originally. It's not my quote or my idea, but somebody said, if you can sell climate change solutions to climate change deniers, you're in a really good shape. So if we can support founders to think that way and be like, it doesn't really matter what you think about climate change, it's just going to be the better solutions. Let's support them. And then let's make sure that we can involve other communities, grassroots communities, activists, and also working people that maybe don't have a lot of time to think about this into it. But I definitely don't have all the answers, I have to be honest. We're trying to invite them along and let them speak with the founders as well. So,
Mara, how do you break that bubble? I mean, I had a blast here on stage, but let's be honest, we did not have one singular controversial panel. Everybody here on stage pretty much agreed, and if there was a struggle, it was about how we get there, not if you want to get there. But I mean, we didn't have anybody from the fossil lobby, or we didn't have any. So I didn't have to actually moderate a lot of conflict here on stage. Is that a good thing, or would it be actually great to invite people we maybe not even like?
Yeah, I think it would be great, and we've invited a lot of them this year, but they just simply do not want to come. I feel like they're coming to like a Shark Tank here, and they're like, oh, no, thank you, because I'll be there on stage, and we're just having like discussions. I'm going to be the bad guy at the end of the day, and that's not our idea. We don't want to have anyone on stage here and blame them. That's not the point. But we do need to have these controversial discussions. I do hope that we've had some of them at the impact stage. I think at the transformation stage is also about best practices and how can we get it done. More discussing use cases rather than discussing whether we need those use cases. But I do 100% agree. I think you just need to make a line or draw a line. Like, I agree with Michael. I'm not going to convince someone who thinks climate change is not real. And I'm not going to invite companies.
That was the extreme example. Of course, there's a lot of grays in between.
No, but I'm also not going to invite companies who still put more money into communicating what they're doing in terms of green transformation rather than putting the money into their actual transformation. But I'm happy to have big industry players here that are not green yet, but are willing to make a change. Like that they at least got in their mind, okay, we do need to do something. Come here, be a partner, be on stage. Let's discuss this together.
So as a team, have you identified some moves to really break that bubble and get out? Or
I think it did work a lot better this year. Like last year, we were really into our sustainability bubble, and it's great. We're all coming together and we're celebrating each other, and everyone is like, yeah, we're doing something right. But then at the end of the day, does it really change anything if you meet the same people, like what you said before? And I do think we did a better job this year, but it's really reaching out also to more traditional actors. For example, what's the IHK, Chamber of Commerce?
IHK, Chamber of Commerce.
Super tough to work together with them, to be honest, because it's just not our pace. It's a lot slower. It's very, they've existed for a long time, but really getting in contact with these networks, like the networks where the companies are in communities existing already, and just getting them kind of to join this movement and to see that there is something different out there.
Can I maybe one thing, because I think we have to differentiate a little bit also, because we don't want everyone in our community. It's not about having the biggest community of all time. And I think at Impact Hub Berlin, for example, we also differentiate between the community managers, or let's say community enablers, and the partnerships team, who also reach out to interesting stakeholders, who gather those stakeholders, who hold space for them to meet and to mingle and to exchange. And we go very strongly with the thought of the idea of an unlikely ally. Like, let's find people who are interested and are maybe not the first one to reach out to within a bubble, but who could partner with our community members, solutions, and then through that actually create more impact. So, yeah.
Now, you've been around for, not you've personally, but the Impact Hub has been around for more than 10 years. So what did you learn on that way in things that also you realized, okay, that maybe was a dead end?
A dead end in terms of how to build
communities, or stakeholders to invite, or formats to approach. Or how has the situation changed since you started? I mean, it's also something to get used to. When you started, it was pretty much a fringe thing. All the big events, they did not care about sustainability. There were like a lot of small events for like a very small idealistic community. But I think the topic, just generally the notion of impact as social, ecological, and monetary bottom line was not mentioned on any significant business panel. Now, any manager learned the definition and learned to include it in a panel speech every once in a while. At least in theory, they use it. But it's also a weird thing, because suddenly everybody seems to be talking about a topic that you're involved in for a decade already. And on the one hand, this is what you worked for. And on the other hand, it does feel kind of strange. And at least I observe it in myself. I'm like, suddenly, who gave you the right to talk about that? You just found out about sustainability half a year ago and you already sell it like a pro. So it's sort of like an ambivalent thing, no? Is it?
But to me, it's not that ambivalent. I mean, it's two things. It's like the impact and sustainability topic. And I'm very happy that it's, like we hear and see more of it, and there's a lot more understanding of it, and a community around it. And I think we are very good in building these communities and a trustful community. And also we have, like, you really have to apply to get a co-working spot at Impact Hub Berlin, for example. So we really carefully select a community that are working on solutions. Like, really, this is their purpose, and they do this with entrepreneurial means, but it's not the other way around. So, and we would not necessarily accept someone who tries to sell us some greenwashing. So this is, I think, also a differentiation, that the discourse is going that way. It's great.
But how do you, because, like, let's say in Germany, like 3 years ago, everybody was talking about sustainability and the sustainability reporting. Now I already see big companies out there. They don't call it sustainability reporting anymore. They call it their impact report, because they learned, it's the fancy new buzzword. And of course, it doesn't have anything to do with the proper definition of impact. It's a new buzzword they take. So somehow you need to defend that word for not being watered down. So how do you keep up a level of quality so that suddenly everybody talks about impact and they actually do not mean the same thing?
Yeah, it's actually a couple of years back as a bit of my background, like in that space to be where I've actually worked with a university on impact reporting and sustainability reporting. A lot of impact reports and sustainability reports I read, like I think often half of it is not worth the paper it's written on. I think a lot of, CSR and all those things are great, but we need to see that your core business leaders, your CEO, your core business leaders are like doing some brutal things internally to turn your business around in terms of sustainability. So a lot of impact reports, unfortunately, still like a lot of woohoo, like we've done some amazing things. Our management did some amazing things. That's, nothing against that, but you need to show how you're actually changing the core business. And I would love it to be about that. And unfortunately, for a lot of companies, it's still not about that. And that's where we get into greenwashing, where we get into telling some nice stories. But to be honest, I would prefer they don't do any of that and just transform their core business, which is much harder. I know.
There seems to be a mechanism still in place to defend it. I mean, another famous event is the Green Tech Festival. And they obviously have Shell as one of their main sponsors. That did happen in the same week as Shell announced that they're going to ruthlessly maximize shareholder value. I mean, timing couldn't have been better for them, I think. Nevertheless, I think some startup complained about the way it was handled on site. And there were a couple of posts on LinkedIn, and one literally had 500 comments, and 499 were critical. I went through the whole list. And there were a lot of significant voices from the German-speaking impact community who really publicly criticized the Green Tech Festival. And even some people where I was like, well, they also still have a stake in being hired as speakers or as consultants by the companies partaking in the Green Tech Festival. So I was surprised that they actually publicly criticized it. So there seems to be a mechanism in check to stay true to the North Star. Obviously, Green Tech Festival isn't here, so it's talking about them without them. So that's a bit unfair. But there seems to be a healthy understanding of what we're really striving for.
At the Green Tech Festival, I mean, or in general? For the impact community.
Yeah.
Just to be transparent, we did invite them to join this panel because we do love an open discussion and just to be like transparent and find better ways. Because I feel like also the Green Tech Festival, it has a good potential to do great things. They have an amazing network within the whole politics in Germany. Like they have really great people on site. They just don't manage to get it the right way. But let's hope they'll manage next year. But I think it is good that people are realizing that, I don't know, you don't want to be on the same event as an event that's sponsored by Shell, but that is the core impact community, I think. Like the people who have been in the business for a longer time and kind of understand what it means and they don't want to be greenwashed.
Yeah. If I can jump in, maybe to bring some, I don't know how controversial it will be. I would love to work with a big oil company, literally. But I can't work with a big oil company that's publicly declaring like we're not going to care about sustainability anymore. Like I need to work with a big oil company that's like, we take this freaking serious. We're going to do something and we're going to work hard and show me some proof that you're actually working hard right now to transform your core business. Now, I don't know if that oil company is out there right now. I know there's some names being thrown around and I could probably mention some. And I'm sure if I throw them around, is also questionable. Are they far enough? Are they doing enough? And for me as a community builder, I'd love to work with an oil company. Just the framework I'm still figuring out is how can I tell they're actually serious? Well, by their actions, and make sure that they're actually moving the needle. And then I think if you're hosting an event, you need to do the work. Like I don't even think you shouldn't work with an oil company, but you need to do the really hard work to make sure they're actually really serious and they're not using as a marketing vehicle to greenwash and put in their impact report at the end of the year, right? So I think that's my view on that. I think sometimes we're still a little bit where we even had it. We have a partner, which is a wealth management firm. They got acquired by Royal Bank of Canada. Royal Bank of Canada is one of the worst financiers of oil projects. So I had to think about this, like what do we do with them? We have this amazing team which has got acquired. What do we do? Do we just throw the sponsor away? And, to be honest, again, I don't have the full answer to it, But if I see that they're serious and that team is serious and we can actually get them to shift something, then I would love to work with them. But it's a really difficult balance. And I think what we're trying to do with them is be like, we're going to hold you accountable. We're also going to call you out if you screw up. You don't have to be perfect. But that's kind of the approach that we're taking.
Yeah, I think the unlikely ally approach is very key also to our work, because we're not going to move anything if we just sit in our bubble and, preach to the convinced. So this is a great example. I think that's also something we strive for. And since we're not taking equity from the startups, it's like we're intermediates. Maybe we bring together the people, but we're like, It's if you're not like, how would you greenwash if we do a workshop where we bring together, like, let's say Coca-Cola with innovative startups? They usually send really great employees and they get inspired and they bring this mindset also back to the company. How great would it be if they would change something in their business model or in their, like, the way they recycle plastic bottles so they don't end up in the ocean? So this is, I think, something that we can, like, we're not a newspaper. We're not making, opinions about something. We just try to facilitate and enable people to hold a space where they can then figure it out themselves also.